regret is very powerful in the mind. And for me, regret actually was a bigger component over fear, because the same thing that you just said. I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, oh, I wish I had done this, or oh, I wish I had done that. And I have a really good friend of mine in England, and he had asked me, he said, when somebody invites you to do something or an opportunity comes up to do something, say yes to everything. And I think that helps move you through those barriers, um, because you don't know where those opportunities are going to lie. Even if it's a cup of coffee or a podcast like this one, say yes and do it because you don't know what's going to come out of it. There could be networking opportunities. There could be somebody that needs to hear this particular podcast. Maybe they're struggling with something and this is the message that they need to hear, and you could help somebody.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. In the Champions Corner edition, I'm Mike Deaton, and together with Lydia, my co-host in life, business, and this podcast, we're taking you into the training room, deep in the dojo, sharing the secrets of what it takes to forge a champion. We're digging deep into mindset mastery, high-performance habits, best-in-class behaviors, and bringing you the tips and techniques that maximize human potential, brought to you from some of the best in the business.
So grab your buds and your seat. Hit subscribe and get ready to up your game. Let's do the show.
Let's do it. Today, Michelle Kimbro joins us in the Champions Corner. After many years spent climbing the corporate ladder and successfully arriving in executive level positions, Michelle felt her career burnout quickly approaching and stood at a crossroads at that point in her life. After taking time to introspect, she took the brave decision to follow her passion and forge her own path. Leveraging her career experience, MBA education, and expertise in Lean Six Sigma as a Master Black Belt, now Michelle is a strategic consultant, helping businesses adopt strategies and tactics to fuel outstanding growth. We loved her insights on how people and organizations can harness efficient practices to grow farther, faster. We cover so many practical examples that can be applied and had a great time getting to know more about Michelle. Let's get right into the Champions Corner and hear more from Michelle Kimbro. Okay, welcome, Michelle, to In the Champions Corner. We're so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. I'm excited to be here too and share some nuggets with your audience.
Yeah, you bet. So, as we introduced a little bit, you have an operational background, some efficiency, and a lot of mindset type activities. But maybe why don't you give us your version of your journey up until this point and hit the highlights, and we can start from there.
So I have 25 years in healthcare. My background is physical therapy. I have an MBA with an emphasis in finance, and I am also a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. It was a cadre of events that brought me to that, and ultimately starting a consulting firm, which a lot of people, I worked for one of the largest healthcare organizations in the United States, and they thought I was crazy because I was on my way up the corporate ladder, 6 figures a year, pension, 6 weeks a year off for paid vacation, all of the perks that go along with that. And I decided to put that aside because I was done with corporate America and I really wanted to do something else. And so I started my consulting firm. And I love teaching and I love coaching. I love lean process improvement, anything around those methodologies. And my whole philosophy is teaching people how to fish, right? And so I love those light bulb moments around that. And so that's what gets me out of bed. But it was a whole bunch of events that got me to where I am today. 10 years on my own as an entrepreneur, and I have seen just about everything that could happen to an entrepreneur in those 10 years. Excited to share some of those. It was so funny. I wrote a post, I don't know, a week or two ago. People were asking, how do I start a business? How do I know what kind of business to start? So I decided to write a series. And the first one is how you decide what business you want, because there's lots of things to pick from. And then all of the, regulatory things that you need to do and entity structures. And then my last post was the unsexy side of being an entrepreneur, because the number one thing that I get from people is, oh, you're so lucky you own your own business. And I always laugh. I'm like, no, you only see a portion of it, because there's a whole other, like the iceberg, analogy, there's a whole bunch up underneath. And, over my 10 years of experience, I've had to tell employees, look, I can't meet payroll. On the other side, we've been able to give generous bonuses. I've started businesses, stopped businesses, started businesses again. I am a serial entrepreneur. So there's a lot around that to unpack. But that's kind of my short version of how I got where I am. And I love business. I love operations. I love helping people. I love helping them solve their problems. And I love helping them figure out what their problems are if they don't know that they even have them.
Yeah, service is great. Yeah, I would say there are a lot of threads we can pull on from your intro there. Maybe let's start at the start. And you brought up an interesting topic of how to decide what to start a business on. I think that applies also in a little bit investing, like trying to decide between different investment classes, assets, or whatever. But yeah, what advice would you give, or how did you go about your journey in picking where to start? I mean, we went through similar process, I'm sure, that we can reflect on. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what that process looked like for you.
Yeah. So with my consulting firm, I actually agonized for 3 months over that decision of leaving the corporate world. I knew I wanted to go out on my own and start my own practice. Uh, but fear was the major thing that stopped me from doing that. And literally, when I look back at it now in hindsight, those 3 months that I spent analyzing and agonizing and all of the fears, the what ifs, was ridiculous, right? And so, I used some of our lean tools, and I did a root cause analysis of why I can't move forward. And the number one thing that I found was I was fearful of losing my pension, losing, a paycheck every 2 weeks, losing my healthcare insurance. And I really did a deep dive into that fear. And my solution was, if I fail, I'll just go get a job. It's not that bad, right? And so once I was able to flip that mindset, it was go time. And, I got my first contract, and I had some great mentors around me that, walked me through that whole process. But in the interim, in that 10 years, my last contract that I was on, I was one of the executives that was helping manage the COVID emergency response for our county. And so another business that I threw up really quick was a medical supply facility, because what we noticed was the smaller, like skilled nursing facilities or even the residential assisted living centers could not get medical supplies, mainly PPE and 95s, isolation gowns, things like that, because everything was being directed towards the hospitals.
Hmm.
And so through my networking and support of the county, I was able to throw that up and support them. And then I did the same thing with a syndication company. So, real estate is, as you know, Mike, is a second passion of mine. And, I had gone through the iterations of, looking at buying single family homes and duplexes and triplexes. And I did the math one day, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to die before I even replace my income if I do this one piece, at a time thing. So that's where I looked at, getting into syndications and learned a lot about that and had success around it. So I think, passion is a lot behind starting a business. So find the things that you like to do, because if you don't like to do it, then it becomes, I always tell people, a job, and you will hate it. Eventually you will hate it. You won't go all in, and it will just fail. And so, passion, what gets you up out of bed, things that you like. And then, of course, skill set. And then around that, finding the people that are successful in what you're doing and getting in the room with them and reaching out to them and asking them to mentor or coach you, and just being a sponge and learning everything that you can around that business that you want to do. So I think that would be my advice, and just get out of your own way because that is your biggest limitator. Is we stand in our own way and we let fear stop us on all these things. So just bust through those roadblocks, get out of your own way, and just go do it, and don't wait for the perfect time to do something.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We certainly can. I think we share a lot of that. So when we 2016, we both were out of a job, looking at what do we want to do next, and trying to decide what to do. And yeah, the fear is definitely, for me personally, a big limiter. Just a fear of failure and taking a leap into the unknown and doing those kind of things. But yeah, I loved a few things that you said there in terms of, just take action, get started. Uh, you can pivot as you did, right? You're into something and you see a need come about, and you can either, just take a moment to capture that need, or totally pivot into that, and go. And the quicker you can do it, the more you can capture advantages.
Yeah, and it goes back to solving problems, right?
Hmm.
So solve the problem that people can't solve, marry that with your passion, and your skill set, and I really think that is a win-win triad if you have those 3 components there.
Yeah, for sure. And we have shared before this episode, but I also come in through the world of Six Sigma, black belt, lean, and efficiency. I spent most of my career in operations and supply chain, and in the I guess early 2000s, when a lot of these initiatives were coming to the U.S. I was an early adopter in that. And so I come from a very logically focused brain and mindset, and just the exercises you went through are classic, because I would have, done much the same things. And like I have done in decision making, I've put together a weighted matrix of, what are the key variables that I need to account for, and how do I score each one and weight them to come out with my decision. Whereas I know there's a lot of people that are not so, structured in their thinking. They go more on intuition and feeling, and just kind of lean into what they're feeling. But yeah, I can totally relate to what you were saying there in terms of using the tool set that you have and skills at your disposal to help you through making decisions, or pushing through obstacles, or rationalizing, are these fears that I'm creating in my head, are they real, or are the consequences that I'm dreaming up, are they even remotely going to happen? We did the same thing when we started our business, right? We decided, let's take a leap. Let's start it. We'll give ourselves a time window. We had a certain amount of financial resources that we could put in as well. And we just said, let's give it a go. If it doesn't happen, same as you, we can get a job somewhere. It's not a problem. It's not a desired state at this point, but I'd rather not have a regret that we didn't take a stab at it. And, fast forward to today, we couldn't imagine having done anything differently. So
Yeah. And I think that's true with a lot of people, whether they be startup companies, seasoned entrepreneurs. Uh, it's the same sort of message. Like, they never regret taking that leap, regardless if that leap was, and this is a loose term, and you'll understand why I'm saying a failure, because it really isn't a failure, because you learn from that failure, right? And you can deploy that into something else. Or if they were wildly successful, I've not met one person that has said, "Oh yeah, I wish I had never done that." There's always a lesson to learn out of that, and I think that's what sets the entrepreneurial mindset differently than maybe somebody that is a blue collar worker or W-2 earner. Not to say that that is a bad thing, because it is not, because the 3 of us here were that at one point too. But there definitely is a different spirit and mindset that take place in an entrepreneur that doesn't elsewhere.
exactly. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yes. And I do remember when we had to take that leap of faith and really face our fears. I was thinking many times, there are some people that never face that fear because it paralyzes them. And one of the things that I was thinking, I don't want to be at the end of my life regretting that I never took the leap of faith that I wanted to take at some point. So I think that made us move forward.
Yeah, and I struggled with that too. Regret is very powerful in the mind. And for me, regret actually was a bigger component over fear, because the same thing that you just said. I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, oh, I wish I had done this, or oh, I wish I had done that. And I have a really good friend of mine in England, and he had asked me, he said, when somebody invites you to do something or an opportunity comes up to do something, say yes to everything. And I think that helps move you through those barriers, um, because you don't know where those opportunities are going to lie. Even if it's a cup of coffee or a podcast like this one, say yes and do it because you don't know what's going to come out of it. There could be networking opportunities. There could be somebody that needs to hear this particular podcast. Maybe they're struggling with something and this is the message that they need to hear, and you could help somebody. So that was his advice to me probably, oh, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. And I left because we were in Greece, and I left and I came home. I said, I'm going to live a life of yes. And if I live a life of yes, then I'll never live a life of regret. Now the caveat to that is, um, don't go and, do something wildly stupid where you could hurt yourself or harm others or whatever. But, I think, some reasonable rationale placed around living that life of yes is very powerful because you grow personally, you grow professionally, and you're able to give back to the community that you're in.
Yeah, the yeses definitely need to be responsible yeses, not crazy, dangerous, illegal, certain things. Right? It's more just intuitive, right? What opportunities could possibly be there, and if there are invitations or certain things. Yeah, I love that concept. And actually, just was listening to another podcast this morning on my run, and they were talking about exactly that concept of. Leaning into certain opportunities and how call it synchronicity or coincidence or whatever, things stitched together in such a way that opportunities do come about, and you can certainly build off of those and make a very fortuitous path in your life where you end up in places you could have never imagined. I mean, we're there today. We never really dreamt of having multiple businesses and living in a place where we live, and I mean, certainly we envisioned, I would say, maybe on a 10 or 15-year plan, and things manifested much more quickly than but also differently, not exactly the way we were drawing things up. And I think when you set out to do something, it's helpful to be super focused and to have those goals, but it's also good to be open to those opportunities. As you just mentioned, right? COVID happens. There's a shortfall or there's a problem to be solved, and you can capitalize on it while also doing great service to communities and people and things like that. I know several people who did exactly that in different submarkets around around the U.S. where they had logistics businesses or something, and they said, "Hey, there's a crisis, there's a need here. I'm going to put my resources toward." Sourcing goods, bringing them in, distributing them, and it was a win-win.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about you deal with entrepreneurs and organizations, I guess, in your consulting practice, and it sounds like you are helping find operational efficiencies, implement changes, put programs in place, but also working with mindset. And I say mindset both from a individual level, but also an organizational level, what would more aptly be called a culture, I guess, a company culture or an organizational culture or something. What are what are some takeaways from your time in that role or as a consultant there that you see successful entrepreneurs and organizations that adopt change and push through it versus those that don't? And I actually wrote earlier when I was taking some notes of things to ask. I wrote success versus failure, and then I erased failure, and I put it's not a failure, it's a non-success or whatever, So,
It's an opportunity to learn,
yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think entrepreneurs are a different breed than executives in the corporate world. Again, it goes back to the mindset, and we are working in our mind 24/7. We are fearless. We are leaders. We're busting through barriers. We're not afraid to try things and fail because that's where we learn and that's where we innovate and get back up and we do it again. So what I've seen in corporate America is our Western business philosophy sucks. Can I say that here? It sucks, right? Because one, we don't grow our people. We don't grow our people. And if everybody's familiar with the Peter principle, we promote people to their highest level in competence. And I have seen that time and time and time again in corporate America. And what you end up is you end up with a C suite that has not had any mentoring to how to lead, and they default back to the Western philosophy of the carrot and the stick, right? So if you're good, you get a treat. If you're bad, you're going to get called into the principal's office and written up. And I'm sure, Mike, you came from the corporate world. You were probably called in the principal's office just like I was, and you question like what is really going on here. And we don't do a good job in corporate America, and maybe even small and medium sized businesses too, of fostering our employee base and growing them and setting in succession plans. Um, and a lot of times, like I said, you get these people that are promoted to these positions and they don't know. They only know what they know. And what they know is what the previous person did or what their the person that they're directly reporting to does. And there's no innovation around that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for coaching and mentoring around that. And that's part of what I do too, because as you know, Mike, when you go and deploy lean operating system, it is completely different than what we teach in our universities here in the United States. And it's definitely different than Western business philosophy because as a leader, you are imparting that control for improvements over to the frontline staff. And it's very big pill for people to swallow, and I have heard it. I don't trust them, and I don't trust them to fix the problem. And I always tell them, look, your employees are your biggest asset of any company because they are working right down in the knee deep of it. They know where the problems are. And I know that because they've created workarounds. So that just tells me they can identify problems. They know how to fix the problem because they developed the workaround. So why don't we just give them a little bit of tools and coaching and some methodology so that they can build something that benefits the company or organization as a whole? And then if I still get pushback of I don't trust them or the employees this or the employees that, I ask them, well, why do you have them? Because clearly they're not the right employee for you. Because if you can't trust your employees and with a task, whether it be problem solving or leading or whatever, and you're not growing and nurturing them, why are they there? And so that really gets people to start thinking about leveraging, their employees because that is what makes the organization run as a very well oiled machine. And it just with the strategy deployment, which is, the lean version of strategic planning, Western business philosophy teaches strategic planning is born and lives in the C-suite, and that's as far as it goes. And maybe once in a while you might get, a president, talking, doing an address or something, and they talk about the goals. But the people on the front line, they're actually doing the work. They are so disconnected, and they have no idea what their contribution in the work environment is to moving the organization. So, there's just many, many different components around there. And huge differences. Now, I have seen very wildly successful organizations in corporate America, but they do those things. They foster their employees, they mentor, they grow, they give people opportunities to spread their wings. Failure is okay. That's the other thing that I see in a lot of organizations in the United States is failure is not okay. And I think that comes from our educational upbringing and our culture is failure is not okay, but it is. And I think, those organizations that are successful, they have some, it may not be a lean or Six Sigma methodology, but they've deployed some sort of that where they're nurturing their employees and growing and giving them the room to fail and learn and innovate and do it again. And those are the organizations that I see that are excelling past everybody else.
Yeah, nice, very empowering, and yeah, empowering organizations. I I have firsthand worked in a European-based company and also U.S.-based companies, large, Fortune 500 tech companies. I was fortunate enough to work at a level in the organization that I personally was introduced and able to be involved in leadership trainings and management trainings and strategy sessions and the like. But one of my primary reasons for not re-entering the workforce as a W-2 employee was exactly that. I had transitioned from working in a European headquartered and run company to a US based company, and the culture and the shock was noticeable and profound in not a good way, such that by the time 2016 rolled around, I was burned out. I was just dreading. I had interviewed with and gone pretty far down the path with a few other Fortune 500 companies in the tech world, and yeah, that was my primary concern: was what type of culture am I going to step into, really, beyond the interviews and the cookie cutter questions that you can ask and the responses that you get and stuff. And you can look on Glassdoor and a few other sites to kind of get a window of what's going on. But yeah, that was, for me, I didn't want any part of that to go back into that world, and just felt there had to be a better way and a better path for me personally to explore my next chapter. And so I, yeah, kind of pulled back all my job requests, and we just decided to go it on our own. But yeah, it is, it's you can't really make blanket statements, but you can in a large sense. I mean, for sure there are exceptions to the rule, both in Europe and the US. There are companies that don't follow the norms, but as a general rule, yes, a lot of companies, especially here in the US, are I say that they're slaves to the quarterly shareholder cycle, where they just have to whip the organization and squeeze every last sale and expense savings they can in before the end of the quarter, such that they can maximize shareholder return and stock price goes up. And so it's an unhealthy way to run what should be a long-term company and organization. And as a result, yeah, training programs, employee nurturing, all those things take a back seat to just do this faster, get this done, achieve an objective.
Yeah, the carrot and stick analogy again,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel good to work in a culture like that at all. It doesn't feel good at all.
No, it doesn't. As I can attest. As an entrepreneur, though, you've been an entrepreneur for many years, and you've worked, I assume, with other small businesses or even solopreneur type. There can be a tendency for much the same mindset, right? Whether we are the employee running the business and we work ourselves an 80-hour work week and continually beat ourselves up about goals not met or certain things like that versus the opposite. Do you see a similar trend or pattern there, or differences in those mindsets? And
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think uh, seasoned entrepreneurs, I haven't found that so much in. Um, they tend to embrace failure, especially in the tech space, the startup tech space. I mean, they're used to, fail often, fail fast because that's how they're going to innovate their platform or their tool, right? But people that are transitioning out of maybe a W-2 environment into owning their own business, those people I see are the ones that are working 80 hours a week, and they're not working smart. They're working harder and they're beating themselves up. They don't even have metrics, so they don't even know if they're meeting anything. They just keep working, and they've got this goal. I want to make $1 million a year. Well, that's great. How are you going to get there? And I always tell people, how do you eat an elephant? It's one piece at a time, right? So that's great. You want to make $1 million a year and you're working 80 hours a week. Well, you're killing yourself. You're ruining your relationships. Your kids don't see you. Your health may be going down the tubes because you don't have time to exercise anymore. And so those people really struggle with that transition because I don't think they have the framework moving into that because they're taking maybe how they worked in that company, and that's how they think that they should work as a solopreneur or, a small business. They're taking what they know. And again, it goes back to you only know what you know until you have somebody like you or I that comes along that says, hey, there's a better way to work, and this is how you can do it. I work maybe 10, 15 hours a week, and that is equivalent to a 40-hour week of somebody else. I get so much done in the short period of time because I'm super focused and I don't have all of the distractions. And for me, that's great because I can be done working by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and take my dad fishing, or read a book or go in the garden or go on a hike. And for me, it's building, my work around my life because for so many years in the corporate world, I lived where I built my life around that corporate entity. And as you guys know, when you're in a leadership position in a corporate America, it's not a 40-hour work week because you now are not an hourly employee, you're salaried, and you actually end up making less as a salaried employee because you got to come back at night or you got to come on the weekends or you're the person on duty if there's an emergency and a pipe breaks, and so you end up making less. And I think some people they take that and they think, oh, this is how we're supposed to work and this is how we start our solopreneur adventure or our small business. And so I think doing things like what we're doing right now help people see that there's a different and a better way to work that is actually more productive and less, dramatic on your life for sure.
Do you mind elaborate a little bit? How did you come to this place in your life where you have that efficiency, where you stay super focused and you have that, it seems like you have a very good work and life balance and you don't work 80 hours a week to accomplish what you do. Do you mind give us some tips on how you accomplish that efficiency in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So trial by fire. When when I first left corporate America and I had my first contract, I was working 60, 70 hours a week. I was making a commute from up by Riverside, this is in California, Riverside down to San Diego. The commute was like 2 hours going down. If I was coming back on a Friday, it could be anywhere up to 4 hours. And it was miserable. And I was having to work on the weekends because I'd have to be out of San Diego no later than 2 o'clock or I'd get stuck in traffic. And so I was taking stuff home. And I woke up one day and I'm like, this feels like a job. Again, feels like when I was in my other, leadership role, and this is not what I signed up to do. And so like everybody else, I started reading, started listening to things, discovering some things that work, that don't work. My morning routine, I don't set an alarm. It's great, maybe because I have an internal clock that I get up every day at 5 o'clock. I don't know. I guess I trained myself, but I get up and I have some core disciplines that I do in the morning. So I pray. I look at affirmations. I look at just being silent and sitting, in my space and just clearing my head for the day. I go and work out. I read every morning. I journal every morning. I look at, what things did I do yesterday that were successful? What things did I do that didn't work out? I practice gratitude every day. And then
Mhm.
I write my plan for the day. And usually, if there's some things that I had on yesterday's plan that I didn't get done, I'll carry those forward first. And those are the things that I would tackle for day. And then, as far as a efficiency perspective, when I actually start my workday, which is around 9 o'clock, I don't have my cell phone in with me. I don't have my Outlook notifications on or even open. I only check email once a day. I used to check it all the time, but it's a constant interruption because then you get sucked into somebody emailed you. Oh my gosh, I got to send them that back right now. But you could be head down into creating a piece of work or doing something or writing a plan. And these constant interruptions between Outlook and your phone pull you in all these ways. And I think there's even studies that it takes 20 minutes for you to get back on task when you get off task. And so a lot of people, I think that they have these distractions. And there was a time I grew up that you had a landline and nobody had cell phones. You know what? Nobody died. Like the work got done. People weren't expecting an answer the minute that they fired off an email or a text message. And I even went as so far, when I initiated this, to let people know. I sent out an Outlook reminder. Somebody emailed me. It was an out of office. I just said, "These are my deep work hours. If it's an emergency, you can call me," and I would define what an emergency was. Otherwise, I will get back to your phone call or your email after 1 o'clock. And now I've even optimized that even more, where I have block time for open office hours. So I used to make myself available all the time to everybody. And that became a disruptor too, because again, if you're creating something and now you got to go to a meeting, well, you're shutting off what you're doing on this task over here and you go to the meeting, and then it's hard to get back on into that task. So I only have 2 days a week with about 3 hours block time in there that people can schedule a phone call with me. And I'm all theirs for that time. So I think through these series of just trying some things, what worked for my life, and I've been working like this is the seventh year now, and it is a discipline 7 days a week. I even do this 7 days a week. So even though it's the weekend, and I don't work weekends either, that is my family time, that's me time, but I still do those. Those core disciplines in the morning of, spending time in prayer and spending time in silence and reading and journaling, all of those things I still do every morning, exercising. Um, so yeah, that's a system that works for me to help me be efficient because again, it got me to designing my work around my life because that's how I want to live. And I think there's even studies. I think Mike, it might be in Sweden or something, that their work week is 30 hours a week, their standard work week. And they get something like 3 months or a year off maternity leave. I mean, just crazy stuff. They are the most productive country in the world. And I forgot the name of the principle. I forgot the name of it, but there is a principle that if you give somebody a timeline to do something, say like 4 weeks. Well, people are going to wait until 3 weeks and, the 30th day to get that task done. And now they're cramming. But, if you optimize and shorten your work week and say, I'm only going to work 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week, it forces you to look at how you get that work done. And then when you start stripping away all those distractions of, you know, people calling, text messaging, social media. I'd encourage somebody to track their social media, how much time they actually spend on their phone, because it's a full workday for some people and then some, But if you strip away those things, you can become super laser focused and accomplish more in a few hours a day than what most people do in 8 hours. And I think that's where the efficient workflow comes through. But that's how I got where I was at. That's where we're going.
Great rundown. Yeah, those are some amazing tips. We have also been on a journey since we've been entrepreneurs, but we are really more strongly, I would say, this year, taking control of our calendar. I mean, you ultimately decide to become an entrepreneur to enjoy freedoms, right? You want freedom of time, you want freedom to control your own income, you want to be able to make your own choices about your life. And all of those things you just finished with listing are reactionary intrusions, right? You get an email, you feel the need to react. You get a text message to react. Social media is completely, reactionary. And so, yeah, similar to what you just described, we also are trying to make bigger time chunks of free days. This is a completely free day. We don't typically work the weekends, but a lot of times we will if we want to take some time during the week, or that's a freedom that we enjoy if we feel the need to be doing something. But we will go through on a quarterly basis now and allocate certain days that we want completely free. No work. We're going to plan something. We're going to go do it. And then we have focus days and or time blocks where, it is, okay, a deep dive in this particular activity or function. And then we'll have in between times where we can then catch up. We can either catch up on stuff we missed in the focus days, or we can respond to things that are happening that we didn't plan for, or those types of things. But yeah, it's very, very important to be proactive with your time. If you want to be efficient. If not, yes. I can't remember the name of the principle you were describing either, but it's the time equivalent of in Lean Six Sigma or operational efficiency. If you put a shelf in a warehouse, it will get filled, right? It's like you can't just have a place full of shelves, because people are going to put stuff on it, or all this stuff. And so, yeah, you want it to be leaned out. You want just enough material that you need to get the job done and be able to replenish on time. So it's very similar time concept, right? If you just say, I need to get a task done in 30 days, then yeah, you're going to fill the space. I'm going to do a little bit here, a little bit there. Actually, this podcast I was referencing, I don't know if you are familiar with or follow a gentleman by the name of Light Watkins. He's a minimalist. He's a meditation teacher. He lives out of a backpack primarily. I mean, he doesn't own material things. He stays in Airbnbs and he enjoys privileges, but he just doesn't own things. He stays very light, as his name represents. But he was just talking about, he wrote a book a few years ago and he wasn't getting it done. It was just, he kept, I do a little bit here, whatever. And he said, finally, what I did was I wrote a check. And he said, I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I wrote a check to a friend of mine for $4,000. And I said, if I don't get this book done by whatever date, you are instructed to cash that check and spend it on something that has nothing to do with me, kind of a thing. And that was his impetus to really set it. He got his ass in gear and he said, okay, I'm focused now. I have a skin in the game here, so to speak. So, but yeah, a lot of times time, we don't really think about it. We all say, I need more time. I wish I had more time. Time is our most precious, valuable asset. But the things we do with our time is asinine sometimes, right? Just scrolling mindlessly through our feed. Worry is a big time suck, right? We worry about what might happen or what has happened or how did I, just things that aren't even in the moment. And this moment passes you by. And so there's a lot of wisdom and efficiency in making sure you are controlling your time. And to your point, you can get so much done when you're focused, and then you have time to spend with your family, to work on hobbies, to do the things you love. And a huge tip. I love that.
And in organizations, I often see that they're running literally every hour to a meeting,
Yeah,
to a meeting.
meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. Yeah. Oh, I've been busy all day. Yeah, be busy.
They're on their phone. Yeah, they're in the meeting on their phone trying to answer emails, right? And then
Yeah,
they wonder why they can't move the organization.
right,
And I've asked many CEOs and presidents, I'm like, why do you have these meetings? I come from a healthcare background, so there are some regulatory meetings that you have to have, but why are you here doing meetings 8 hours a day and then you run right up to, if it's at 2 o'clock, the next meeting starts at 3 o'clock. Well, the 3 o'clock meeting is way across the campus. So now everybody is late to the meeting because they're running from this one and they didn't have travel time. So now everybody's leaving work at 6:30 because all the meetings ran over. And then they're like, I didn't get anything done today.
right. Yeah,
I mean, it's a very simple fix, but so hard because again, it goes back to we only know what we know. Well, we have meetings. That's how you run a business. You have meetings all day.
right.
I don't know who does the work, but you just have meetings all
Well,
day.
you do it on extra time. Exactly what you said. You do. My work day is largely 6 hours of meetings, and then okay, what I don't get done, I take home with me, and I work in the evenings or on the weekends or those kind of things. It's it's a very cultural phenomenon in a lot of places.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I wanted to touch on it kind of slipped by us earlier, but as an entrepreneur, and you mentioned this word failure, but I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, and even in the workplace, and sometimes that can be culturally driven, this resistance to failure because there is a stick for certain types of activities. But for me, that's something that I have had to wrestle with. Just growing up, I was a first child and kind of brought some of that baggage that I created really that, I have to achieve and not fail and be the golden child and do these things. But then also in the workplace, to be the provider, to continue to get promotions, which largely equates to not having a lot of failures on your resume. But I do think that's an important mindset shift for many of us in that, reframing failures as feedback, allowing, especially as entrepreneurs, because a lot of times we try things or we should be trying things that may not succeed, but it's a data point along the way, right? We say, okay, this didn't quite work. Maybe I course correct and I take myself there, or maybe it's just not a viable pursuit or something. But that's something that I see in a lot of cases tie people up in terms of, well, I could try, but what if I fail? Or okay, what if you do? Then what success was ever really born from the first strike? I don't know many, but I'm curious if you encounter that in your consulting or personally even, kind of a situation there.
As far as fear and getting over it,
Your failure and how you work through it, and how it sounds like you've come to embrace a little bit more that spirit.
I love failing. I do because those are my best moments. They may sting sometimes. I'm not going to lie. They may sting sometimes, but it goes back to what you were saying is the regret, right? At least we tried something and it didn't work. All right. So what is the lesson out of it? And I think that's how I tend to frame everything in my life, personally and professionally, is what's the lesson in this? And some days I really wrestle with it because I don't know what the hell the lesson is, but there's something there. But you know, I think when it goes back to school, right? I mean, why do we have A, B, C, D, E, and F? I mean, you get the F or the D or the C, and you're like, oh God, I got to go home and tell my parents my report card. I failed geology. And so we have this constant reinforcement that failure is not okay. And so when I coach people or I train them in lean methodology, I always tell them I set the stage that failure is okay. And from those failures, if you frame it with the mindset, what can I learn or what's the lesson in here? Then that will help drive innovation and get you on to the next thing, right? And what is it? Fail fast, fail often. And that's that's how you get to the finish line, is by doing that. By doing things how we've always done it does not get you to the finish line as an entrepreneur. You have to innovate. You have to constantly testing. You have to constantly be failing. In my businesses, I test everything. I test everything. I test every little change, test of change. Did it work? Did it not work? Did it provide the result that I thought I was going to get? Right now, I'm testing all of my social media between long form posts, graphic posts, videos, long form posts with pictures in it. And this week, my test is, instead of using a third party service like Buffer to do the postings, I'm doing all the long form posts myself, because I had read, typing it in, there's something in the algorithms called time in the box. And when you're typing out a long form post by hand rather than copying and pasting it, it actually bumps you to the top of the algorithm. So that's what I'm testing this week. Is that even true? I mean, I test but validate everything. And if it's true, yeah, I'll probably be spending a little bit more time maybe hand typing stuff
In
in.
the box.
If it, yeah, the time in the box. But if it bumps me to the top of the algorithm and more people see my content and more people connect with me and more people get phone calls scheduled with me and more people decide that, yes, they want me as a coach or they want me as a trainer, or yes, I want in your deal, then yeah, then I'm going to do that. But I test everything, and people laugh at me and I'm like, no, this is what you need to do. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to be testing stuff and you need to be measuring it, because not everything is a failure, and some things may fail a little bit, but you learn stuff. Like last week, I did some long form content. And I'm like, let me see what this does. Just like no pictures, no nothing. Let me just see what happens. It actually did really good. And then I thought, well, let me put a picture in there. And I did a picture in there. And it was a post that I did that was kind of vulnerable for me, coming out of a space.
Mhm.
It wasn't even really connected to business or anything. It was just sharing something. And it has gotten the most impressions and the most engagement. I'm like, okay. And the same thing with the videos. I hate doing videos. I don't know anybody that loves doing videos. Like, it takes me 50 times to get one 30-second clip. It's just ridiculous. I know I'll get better over time, but I hate it. But I started posting videos, and I did a 7-day video challenge about my business and how I can help people and what I do, and a case study. And I looked at the impressions and the engagement. I'm like, oh my gosh, people actually like videos.
Yeah.
Darn it.
I'm going to have to do videos. I can't hide behind the little graphic or the words anymore, got to put myself out there, but it works, and so I test everything that I do. If I'm talking to investors, I have a whole investor process that I go through, and I test everything and get feedback from everything, because that's just going to make everything that I do better and customer focused, because it's never about us, right? It's always about who we're trying to help and what problems we're trying to solve, for those particular people. So I think it's important to test and be okay with failure. But the first time you do it, first couple times that you do it, it's a really big pill to swallow, because your norms and your values that you grew up with, it goes against every grain that you're going to fail. And you may know, when you start testing something, you may know out of the gate, this is not going to work, but you have to see it through, because again, even if you know it's going to fail, there's learnings in there that you can innovate. And that's what gets you to the finish line, is that piece there.
Yeah, so true. This I love the fact, another Lean Six Sigma concept, but having the intentionality and framing things as a test or an experiment, and designing that experiment in such a way that you do get the feedback. Because otherwise, you can just go along and mindlessly continue to ineffectively and inefficiently post content that's not generating a desired result, right? There's so many, you just ran through a litany of the video, long form, short form, memes, funny, vulnerable, clinical, all these kind of things. And very much depends on your avatar and who you're going for, and what outcome you want. But yeah, all those variables play together, aside from the 1,000 other variables that we don't even know about that are in the black box that we can't figure out. But at least the ones that we can control for, there are great insights there. But I think that takes a lot of the pressure off of failure, being that it's an experiment. Like, hey, I'm going to do video. I'm going to do educational video. I'm going to do a vulnerable video. I'm going to not do video. I'm going to do a chat GPT / AI non-personal video, whatever, all these things that come up. But definitely that's a big one, I think. And we have been, we've been in a coaching program, a business coaching program, coming up on a year now. And there's a tool that they recommend that's very much along the lines of an 8D or some kind of a problem solving tool. But the gentleman, Dan Sullivan, he calls it an experience transformer. And so, whatever experience you go through, he has put together a form where you look at, okay, what did I do? What outcome did I want? What were the results I got? And how could it have been better? Those kind of things. And so it's a very simple way to analyze things that you've done and to take away those key learnings and then to further improve as you go forward. But yeah, I think that's super important to capitalize on failures.
Yeah, I do too, because why would you want to keep doing something that doesn't work?
Right. In the military, I think they do after action reports where they go on a mission and they come back and they go through in excruciating detail. Okay, tell me everything that happened. Let's go through it. How could we have improved this? What went wrong? How could we have planned a contingency or done something? And obviously there are life and death consequences around those. And so similar to an airplane or other safety type processes, there's a level of depth that needs to be gone through in those types versus, okay, maybe in your business, you can be a little looser with some of the of that. But it's super important to, if you want to make the improvements, to be going through these after action reports and experiment results and fine tuning your process, A/B testing, whatever it is, just go through and look at all that stuff. Really, really powerful tips.
Yeah, because if you don't, you then become the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing, but expecting a different result, right? And you have to be innovating all of the time because your competition up the street is innovating. Most likely they're innovating. And so if you want to stay in the game and get to the finish line, you need to innovate too. And the only way you can do that is by setting up, a series of experiments and, measuring them and figuring out what works and then quickly getting rid of those things that don't work and moving on to the things that do work. And I think that's, secret sauce. I know that's everybody says that, but there's a lot of value in that. Like it's rocket fuel on that fire, because you're not wasting time doing things that aren't working because you went through those tests, you figured out where the failures were, you fixed it, you innovated, and now you're being propelled forward on this journey where you can go through those cycles again. And I think that's what makes successful entrepreneurs and businesses, whether it be corporate America or it be the mom and pop show, show doing, bakery goods or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, really important. And also this is where I think the importance of consultants like you. There's also a wealth of information out there if you want to tap into it on the internet or whatever. But this is where, similar to in the world of Six Sigma and black belts, you have to be really skilled at setting up the experiments and understanding the variables, what's controllable, not controllable, and interpreting the results. And so, that's where it does become a little tricky. And I think it turns a lot of people off because, it's easy to think, well, I don't know what is an A/B test? How could I set this up? And how do I iterate it and then how do I interpret the results to do all this stuff? So that's where, I do think it's really valuable to invest in coaching, consulting, education of some kind, or somebody to do those things for you, because you can really take away some powerful lessons and yeah, like you said, just add rocket fuel to your growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want to grow, there's a lot of value in that, learning how to do these things, and I think that's what makes my consulting firm a little bit different is it's boutique. It's not like the big five where they come in and, oh, this is your problem and this is what you need to do. Okay, bye. No, I actually take the time to teach somebody how to fish because that's a very scalable model because then if they know how to use the tools or set up experiments or learn how to read data, then they can teach that to somebody else in their business or their organization. And it becomes a very scalable model versus me coming in saying, oh, this is your problem. That's your problem. Here's the solution. Good luck, everybody, and a lot of consultants do that. But I like to think that I'm a boutique where I actually come alongside them and help them learn as they grow. Because that's for me, it's all about helping people solve their problems. And if I come in and tell them how to fix it, they're not really learning, and I think that's where a good fit comes in because there are people out there that just tell me what the problem is and how to fix it, which I guess that's okay too. But, learning how to do these things yourself, just like tying your shoes, your mom and dad showed you, or maybe a brother or sister, they showed you how to tie your shoe. And then next thing you know, you're able to tie your shoe and then you could show your younger siblings how to tie your shoe. So same sort of thing.
Yep. Powerful stuff.
We would love to talk to you for hours. I'm so sad that the hour is up and we kind of have to cut it short. But Michelle, how if people that listen to this podcast are inspired and want to know about you and what you do and the services that you provide, how they can get in touch with you and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to michellekimbro.com. That's Michelle with two L's and an E at the end. And the last name is kimbro.com. I've got links to my coaching program and training program on there. I've got links to my website. I even have a video of me sinking at sea during the Transpac a few years ago. I've got a free download for a meeting management guide and how to run efficient meetings. I've got all sorts of stuff on there. I do have a free 5S training workplace training coming up on July 27th. I'll probably do it again next month. My next cohort for coaching and training will be starting in August. So all of that information they can find out on michellekimbro.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great community. For sure.
And I promise I'll check out the book, Think Big.
Yeah, absolutely. And if your listeners would like a free copy of that, I'm more than happy to send out an autographed copy to them if they just want to send me an email at michellekimbro.com, michelle@michellekimbro.com, and I will get that out to them.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep that in the show notes and see if some take you up on that. Well, we certainly appreciate the time you spent with us today. Some golden tips that came through, and wish you all continued success in your endeavors, and we'll continue to cross paths here, I'm sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much for having me, you guys. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
You bet.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
For those of you joining us today, we hope you enjoyed this time in the Champions Corner as much as we did. Got some awesome takeaways, and most importantly, will take action to continue living your best life and maximizing your potential. Mindset is such an important aspect of life, and when coupled with action, delivers undeniably powerful results.
Please subscribe to the podcast to hear from more great guests and get the latest mindset mastery insights and cash flow matchups.
Again, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast.